Right now, while you sleep, while you go about your daily life completely unaware, something is happening beneath your home. The plants growing along your walls, around your driveway, climbing your fences, the ones you carefully watered, trimmed, and tended, they are quietly dismantling the very structure your home is built upon. Foundation repair in the United States costs between $8,000 and $100,000. In the UK, underpinning a single section of a compromised foundation runs between £5,000 and £50,000. And the most devastating part, in the majority of cases, the damage was caused not by floods, not by earthquakes, not by poor construction, but by ordinary garden plants that most homeowners consider harmless, even beautiful. There is a list of 10 plants. They are almost certainly growing near your home right now. And the landscaping industry, the foundation repair industry, and the garden centers selling you these plants have had absolutely no financial incentive to warn you about any of them. That changes today. The villain in this story is not one industry. It is the quiet collaboration between several. Garden centers and nurseries sell you plants labeled as low maintenance and great for borders, without disclosing that their root systems can extend 30, 40, even 60 feet in search of moisture. Foundation repair companies arrive after the damage is done, charge you tens of thousands, and send you home with a waterproofed wall, but no explanation of what caused the problem in the first place. And structural surveyors, when they do identify root intrusion as the culprit, rarely walk you into the garden and show you exactly which plant was responsible. Homeowners in the US spend an estimated $25 billion annually on foundation-related repairs. In the UK, the Association of British Insurers has repeatedly flagged subsidence, the ground movement caused largely by plant root activity, as one of the costliest claims in the entire home insurance sector, averaging between £12,000 and £15,000 per incident. You have been paying for this damage your entire homeowning life. You have been paying for it in repair bills, in rising insurance premiums, in survey costs when you try to sell, and in the sleepless anxiety of watching a crack appear in your wall and not knowing what is coming next. But that changes today. By the time you reach the end of this, you will know exactly which 10 plants are most likely to be compromising your foundation right now. You will understand the precise mechanism by which they cause damage, because it is not what most people assume. You will know which species pose the greatest risk based on your soil type, your climate, and how close they are to your structure. And you will have a clear, actionable plan to address the problem before it reaches the point where a repair company needs to be called at all. But stay with me. Because there is one critical mistake almost every homeowner makes when they try to remove these plants themselves. And it is a mistake that makes the damage significantly worse. I will show you exactly what it is and exactly how to avoid it. This story does not begin in a garden. It begins in the 1950s, in the aftermath of the great suburban expansion on both sides of the Atlantic, when millions of new homes were being built rapidly on land that had not been properly surveyed for its tree and plant history. Developers, eager to landscape quickly and cheaply, planted fast-growing, visually impressive species along boundaries, driveways, and walls. They planted Japanese knotweed because it established fast and looked dramatic. They planted willows and silver birches near homes because they were affordable and grew quickly into mature, impressive trees. They planted English ivy along walls because it looked classic and required no maintenance. Nobody, at that stage, had conducted long-term studies on what these root systems would do to clay-heavy soils over decades. And when the damage started appearing, the diagonal cracks above window frames, the sloping floors, the doors that suddenly would not close properly, the construction industry's response was not to warn homeowners about the plants. It was to develop an entire repair sector to fix the consequences. By the 1980s, the UK's National House Building Council had internal documentation acknowledging that high water demand vegetation within certain distances of structures was a primary driver of subsidence claims. That documentation existed inside the industry. It was used to write guidance for builders and insurers. It was not written into the leaflets handed to homeowners when they moved in. The landscaping industry continued selling the same species. The insurance industry quietly factored the resulting claims into premium calculations. And the homeowner, standing in their garden center with a trolley full of plants, received no warning whatsoever. What they didn't want you to realize is that a fully informed homeowner is a homeowner who stops buying certain plants, stops needing certain repairs, and stops generating the revenue that keeps multiple industries operating. The suppression was not conspiratorial. It was simply financial. And it has been costing you money ever since. What I'm about to show you is the part the industry spent decades making sure you'd never find out. It is not the list of dangerous plants itself. Some of that information does exist, buried in surveyor reports and insurance small print. It is the mechanism, the exact biological process by which roots destroy foundations. Because once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at your garden the same way again, and you will understand why removal alone is sometimes not enough. The damage does not happen the way most people picture it. A thick root physically pushing through concrete like something from a film. That does happen, but it is the secondary stage. The primary mechanism is soil desiccation. Tree and plant roots, particularly those of high water demand species, extract enormous volumes of moisture from the soil surrounding your foundation. A mature willow tree can absorb up to 1,000 liters of water from the soil every single day. When that water is extracted from clay soil, which makes up a significant proportion of the ground beneath homes across the American Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, and vast stretches of England, the clay shrinks. It contracts, and when the soil your foundation is sitting on contracts unevenly, the foundation moves. One corner drops, one wall shifts, and those diagonal cracks appear above your windows and doors, the telltale signature of subsidence that every surveyor recognizes immediately. The second mechanism is root penetration of existing weaknesses. Every foundation has minor vulnerabilities: hairline cracks, weak mortar joints, drainage channels. Fine feeder roots, some as thin as a human hair, seek out moisture, and moisture collects in those cracks. The root enters, grows, expands, and the crack widens. Over years, what began as a hairline crack that you could seal with a tube of filler becomes a structural breach requiring masonry repair. This is the part that took researchers decades to fully document, because the timescale is so long, often 10 to 20 years, from planting to serious damage, that the causal link between a specific plant and a specific crack is almost never made by the homeowner. And this is where it gets interesting, because the 10 plants responsible for the overwhelming majority of this damage are not obscure species. They are the plants in almost every garden on your street. If you have found this information useful, consider subscribing, not for the algorithm, but because everything covered in this channel is the kind of knowledge that the people charging you money would rather you never had. The first plant is Japanese knotweed. This one has received some public attention in recent years, but the coverage has consistently underplayed how aggressive it truly is. Japanese knotweed roots, technically rhizomes, can extend 7 meters deep and extend laterally up to 20 meters from the visible plant. They can penetrate concrete at the weakest joint. They have been documented growing up through asphalt driveways, through cavity walls, and through the mortar between foundation bricks. If you see hollow bamboo-like stems, shovel-shaped leaves, and small white flowers in late summer, do not attempt to dig it out without a plan. Disturbing the rhizome without removing every fragment causes it to regrow from pieces smaller than your fingernail, and it can spread the infestation to areas it had not yet reached. In the UK, you are legally required to dispose of it as controlled waste. In the US, regulations vary by state, but the plant is classified as invasive in most of them. The second plant is the silver birch. This is one of the most popular garden trees on both sides of the Atlantic, and one of the most destructive near buildings. Its root system is wide, shallow, and extraordinarily thirsty. On clay soil, a mature silver birch within 15 meters of a foundation is one of the most statistically reliable predictors of subsidence that structural surveyors use. If you have one, the key question is not whether to remove it. It is how far it is from your structure and how mature it is. A tree that has been in place for over a decade has already altered the moisture content of the surrounding soil. Rapid removal can cause the soil to rehydrate and expand, which can heave a foundation upward just as harmfully as it was previously being pulled down. This is the mistake most people make. Remove high water demand trees slowly, ideally with staged crown reduction over 2 to 3 years, to allow the soil to rebalance gradually. Always consult a structural engineer before removing a large, established tree near your home. The third plant is English ivy. The root damage it causes to mortar is well documented among stonemasons and conservationists, but rarely communicated to homeowners. Ivy's adhesive rootlets penetrate mortar joints, particularly in older lime mortar, which is softer than modern cement. Over time, as the stem thickens, it widens those joints. Moisture enters, frost freezes the moisture, the joint fractures. Repeated seasonally, this process degrades the structural integrity of an entire wall face within 15 to 20 years. The fourth is bamboo, specifically the running varieties, which are sold in their millions as privacy screens and architectural plants. Running bamboo spreads via underground rhizomes that can travel 2 to 3 meters per year. They go under and around concrete footings. They emerge on the other side of walls. They have been documented entering and blocking drainage systems, which creates secondary water damage. When drainage is blocked, ground saturation increases, soil loses load-bearing capacity, and foundations settle. The fifth plant is the Leyland cypress, the most commonly planted hedge tree in the UK and widely used in the US. It is a very high water demand species. Rows of Leyland cypress planted as a boundary hedge, particularly on the south or west side of a property on clay soil, have been directly linked to differential settlement in dozens of documented insurance cases. The sixth is the weeping willow, a tree whose beauty is entirely disproportionate to the destruction it causes near buildings. Its root system is the most aggressive of any commonly planted ornamental tree. The standard guidance from UK structural engineers is that no weeping willow should be planted within 40 meters of a building on clay soil. Most homeowners have never heard this figure. The seventh is wisteria, romantic, beautiful, and sold at every garden center as a wall plant. Its woody stems can develop the diameter of a tree trunk over decades, and its root system is powerful enough to lift patio slabs, displace driveway edges, and crack render on walls as the stem base expands. The eighth is Virginia creeper, similar to ivy in its wall-penetrating mechanism, with the added risk that its weight, when fully established across a large wall, can pull at mortar and fixings, particularly where the pointing has already been weakened by age or weather. The ninth is buddleia, the butterfly bush. It self-seeds prolifically, and it has a particular talent for establishing itself in wall cracks, gutters, and the joints between paving and structures. Its roots follow moisture aggressively and will exploit any weakness in masonry. The 10th is the common fig tree, rarely discussed in this context, but enormously destructive. Fig roots are among the most powerful and invasive of any ornamental species. They seek water with extraordinary aggression and have been documented penetrating drainage pipes, water mains, and foundation walls in urban gardens across southern England and the southern United States. A fig tree planted against a sunny wall, which is exactly where most people plant them, is one of the most dangerous plant placements you can make near a building. Before wrapping up, there is one more thing about this problem that almost nobody talks about, and it is the connection between plant root damage and your home's drainage system. When roots enter and crack drainage pipes, which happens silently underground with no visible symptom for years, the leaking water saturates the surrounding soil. That saturation softens the load-bearing ground beneath your foundation. What appears as subsidence caused by soil shrinkage is sometimes actually subsidence caused by soil saturation from a cracked drain that was breached by roots a decade earlier. A CCTV drain survey, which costs between $150 and $400 or pounds, can identify root intrusion in drainage before it reaches the foundation. Most homeowners only discover broken drains during a house sale survey, by which point the damage has been accumulating for years. Consider what this information is actually worth. A foundation repair that cost $20,000 could have been prevented by removing a silver birch that cost $40 at a garden center 20 years ago. An insurance claim for subsidence that raises your premiums for 5 years could have been avoided by cutting back an ivy that was sold to you as a maintenance-free wall covering. The before is a homeowner with a beautiful garden and a slowly compromising foundation, receiving no warning from the industry that profits from both the planting and the repair. The after is a homeowner who understands the risk profile of every plant within 20 meters of their structure, who has made informed decisions about what to keep and what to remove, and who is not funding a repair industry that depends on their ignorance. The cost comparison is not complicated. Removal or management of a dangerous plant, free to a few $100s. Ignoring it for another decade, potentially the single most expensive repair your home will ever need. The most common scenario that structural engineers encounter is the homeowner who says, "I noticed the crack 3 years ago, but thought it was just the house settling." It was not the house settling. It was a root system doing exactly what it was always going to do, on a timeline that was entirely predictable to anyone who knew what to look for. What has been covered here is the visible layer of this problem, the plants, the mechanism, the damage. But there's a deeper layer that most homeowners never reach, and it is the one that determines whether your foundation is already compromised or still salvageable. It involves understanding your soil type, your drainage map, and the moisture history of the ground your home sits on. Information that exists, that can be obtained, and that changes everything about how you manage the land around your home. The plants described here are the agents of damage, but the soil beneath your home is the medium through which all of it happens. And what certain soil types do to a foundation, even without any plant involvement, is a story that the construction industry has been just as reluctant to tell you. The question is not just which plants are in your garden right now. The question is what the ground beneath your home has already been through, and whether the damage that has been building for years is still reversible.